And you guys as kids, when you're complaining and saying, this isn't fair, do you really know down deep inside it is fair, but you're just complaining about it anyways?
100%.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Parent Pep Talk, advice and understanding from experts, parents, and kids. I'm your host, Gary Carton, and in the short time we've had this podcast, we've received a bunch of requests for episodes on technology, specifically when and how to get your kids started with a smartphone, so that's what we're going to focus on today. We'll also talk about how to know and what to do if screen time is getting out of control, and how this new digital age is having a profound impact on our kids. And off the record, our panel of kids answers a question about how to get your kids off their phones, and one dad takes one for the team by sharing a story about his son's secret Snapchat account. Plus, our Safe Kids Tip of the Week will keep your kids and really all of us safer when we're walking to school or anywhere else. So let's get right to it. We're not messing around with this episode. We've got two experts instead of one. Marc Groman is a former White House tech and privacy advisor, and Dr. David Reitman is a doctor focusing on adolescents. And in their spare time, they host a podcast about technology called Their Own Devices, which I highly recommend. And Marc and David aren't just experts, they're also married and raising a teenage son, so they have this issue covered from every angle. They also have a beautiful home, which is where we caught up with them. So thank you guys so much for joining us on the Parent Pep Talk. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So this is a podcast about parenting, so we always like to start there. Can you tell us how many kids you have and what are their ages?
We have one son. He is in 7th grade. He's 13.
And what is the most surprising thing about having a kid so far?
Oh God, I don't know where to start. I think that everyone always assumes that if you work with teenagers for a living that you're gonna be great at parenting a 13-year-old. And just like I learned when he was a baby, that being a pediatrician doesn't necessarily make you a good parent.
Well, one thing that you guys are total experts at is this issue of technology. So maybe it's a good idea to start there. Why is this such an important issue for parents?
So the fact is, we are raising our children in a new digital environment, and technology and digital media, interactive media, is changing our children, right? It is impacting the way they will think and behave, the way they will communicate, the way they will date. I notice I didn't say anything was bad or good. It's simply, it is changing. Mm-hmm. Now, it's incumbent on us to help ensure that this change will be positive. The problem is that we are not ahead of this. So parents are sort of coming to this late. Silicon Valley, the companies that create tech, they're not doing it because they are a nonprofit school, right? They are doing it because they need to make a profit for their shareholders. They do that by keeping our kids on their devices and by collecting data and getting ad revenue. And so we need to understand all of that. And if we don't teach them how to use these tools properly, then we're in for a world of hurt.
Well, I think it goes to show that this is such a big issue. Mm-hmm. And if only there were a podcast that was completely dedicated.
Right.
There you go.
Which is a shameless plug for you guys, because I know you guys have your own podcast called Their Own Devices, and I've listened to several episodes, and you guys are amazing. And I think for the purposes of this podcast, maybe we need to pick it apart and start at the beginning. At what age should parents be thinking about allowing kids to have their own smartphone?
I don't think there's an age piece to this. I think it's when...
If you ask me, it's 21.
Right.
So you would delay it as long as possible.
Well, I think that it kind of comes to what is the functionality that parents need their kids to have at a given age. So for some parents, they want to be able to call and text their kid if their kid's going to be walking home from school by themselves. And if that's happening at age 11, then that might be the time they're going to give them a phone that has maybe some limited capabilities, and then the parents can decide as time goes on how much additional capabilities do they want the kid to have. But there's not one age. It's not like you turn 14 years old and boom, you get a smartphone, because you turned 14. It really has to do with what are they going to need it for.
Also, for your audience, I want to be really precise, and sorry about that, right? I'm a prosecutor, and so...
No, I love it.
So I'm really precise.
Here we go.
And, well, this is, for parents who are thinking about this, we seem to be having these conversations about when do I give my son or daughter a smartphone at what age? And we forget that the smartphone is the beginning, and you can give a kid a smartphone and have no apps on it, and you can control their ability to use it at certain times and not use location settings. And so it's not a when, like in other words, an on-off. It is how to maturely, intelligently, and gradually introduce our kids over time to tech.
What are some simple tips parents can use to kind of start getting ahead of this issue of technology?
So let's just say you're presenting your kid with their first smartphone, iPhone or an Android device. Mom, Dad, you have to understand what the phone does. And it sounds silly, and I know that most adults think they do, and I find that they don't. I can't tell you how many times I sit down with an adult and I've introduced them to their privacy and security settings on the phone, and then show them how many apps are actually accessing their contacts, their calendar, tracking their location, and they're stunned. So with your kid, what you do is you go through the privacy settings and the security settings, and you set them with your child, and you tell them they may not change them. You set a password for the device and for the screen, so the screen is locked, right? It's not safe to walk around with a phone that doesn't have a locked screen. And you set those passwords, you know what they are, and you tell your child they may never change them, and they may never have a password that they do not share with you. Third, so if you're on an iPhone, use screen time. It's a new feature. It's available. If you're on Android, there's Family Link and other options like that. That will allow you to actually shut the device down at a certain time. So at 9 p.m., if you don't want to fight, you can shut down the device or just certain features. It will tell you what your child is doing. It will give you the ability to limit content, age appropriate, in your opinion, not age appropriate. And it's very simple to use. You connect your device to your child's device, and you get visibility into what they're doing. Your child at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 should not have access to the App Store, period, full stop. There are hundreds of thousands of apps, many of them not appropriate. Your kid should not be able to download Tinder when they're 13 if you don't want them to be on Tinder.
I couldn't do 60% of the things you're talking about right now. What's the first step in learning how to do these types of things?
So first step, actually do exactly what our kids do. Go to YouTube and type in how to use screen time, or go just type in screen time and you'll get to the website and there'll be video tutorials. Yeah. I promise you the few things I just mentioned are really easy and straightforward.
Got it, okay.
And they are not that difficult. It gets more complicated as your children get older and as you start allowing them on multiple platforms. But at this initial stage, I could walk you through this in 10 minutes and it would not be that difficult. Also, here's another very concrete action item for parents is tell your kid whatever it is you're doing on the internet, whatever it is. You may think it's private. There's no such thing. I would say this about 7 to 10 times per day for a year, that it is public, it is permanent, and you cannot delete it. And before every text, right, before every photograph, just double check, count to 10, could I show this to grandma?
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, right?
And get that in their head, that delete doesn't mean delete. There's no delete button on the internet, public, and there forever. And try and get that ingrained in their head.
Is all screen time created equal? Is it okay to read a book on a Kindle? What's your philosophy on that?
All screen time is not created equal.
Okay.
And so where the American Academy of Pediatrics, for example, came out a couple of years ago saying that there should be no more than 2 hours a day of screen time, that in some ways may not be fair or realistic. Most experts in the field would say that there's a big difference between what's going on when a kid is doing homework or a kid versus the kid who's watching YouTube videos versus the kid who is Snapchatting with their friends versus the kid who's binge playing on their Xbox. All those things are screen time, but they're not all the same thing.
And what would be things that you would consider to be healthy screen time versus screen time that needs to be monitored and limited?
So the Kindle, for better or worse, is a modern way of reading books. So that is probably okay. Using the computers for homework is obviously okay. Using computers for projects to do research, all good stuff.
But this is where my insistence on precision is so important, because you can't even lump all video games together.
Right.
And so there are video games that are solo player violent video games that could have one set of issues, and there are other games that really require careful thought, and it's a video version of chess. Similarly, YouTube, which is right now the bane of my existence and a huge problem for most parents of teen boys, because of YouTube binging. I mean, I do know some kids who go and will watch educational videos or on just some topic they really like, whether it's animals or military history, and there's a lot of great content for kids there, or how to program. On the other hand, some kids might watch 2 hours of some Australian guy playing Fortnite, cursing every third word and teaching you how to get to the next level. So the digital world, it has all these positives, but it's 24/7 access to hundreds of thousands of resources and millions of people, which means that you have access to great content and information, and you have access to horrible content and horrible people.
And what I like about things you guys are saying is that this isn't black and white, that there's some nuance involved. And I think that can make it easier for parents because they can use their judgment. At the same time, it can make it harder for parents because you don't always see your kid in the same light that maybe they are. And sometimes it is easy to kind of have some set guidelines on what to follow. What would be some things parents can look for to let them know that maybe they're going over from a healthy relationship with this phone to maybe something that could be a little more troubling?
I think that anything that is indicating a lack of moderation is going to be your key first issue that you're going to see. If the kid is spending all this time on their screen, on their phone, whatever it is, and they have stopped doing things like performing in school, they've stopped doing things like wanting to hang out with friends. If you're kind of judging and saying, my kid is turning into a different person when they're exposed to this stuff for periods of time, that's usually going to be something that's going to say, hey, we need to kind of slow down on this.
When you see some of these symptoms, maybe they're not engaging with their friends, maybe they're not getting enough sleep. I've heard you say that in other episodes. What are some simple steps parents can do to kind of get ahead of this or fix something if the kids have gone too far?
Different people have different views on this, but I think when your child is younger and it's their first time engaging in social media, I review content. I want to see what is in the group chat. I want to see what friends are posting, kinds of photographs and conversations that are taking place. And I think that's important. And we've explained that we have a right to do that. So
when your kid says, you don't trust me and that's not fair, and how come my friends their parents don't check in, what do you say to them?
I say, you're right. I don't trust you.
That's
fair.
right.
I said fair isn't relevant. And the fact that other parents don't understand this sucks for you.
So I had this conversation 7 times today in my clinic.
Okay.
So I think absolutely parents need to feel empowered to say, you know what? I'm going to be monitoring what's going on, and I'm going to be able to, and at any time I can look at your texts. At 9 o'clock, the phone gets plugged in the kitchen, and it is not going to your room, so you can be getting notifications all night. It's going to be keeping you up. And sometimes I think a lot of times parents are like, can I really do that? Is that going to affect my kid socially? Is it going to, you know what? For a lot of kids, when they're struggling with this stuff, which is the essence of middle school for the most part, it is totally fine and appropriate and expected that parents are going to be more hands-on and not give these kids this kind of level of independence. And frankly, a 13-year-old does not need that level of responsibility on their own. And for a lot of kids, middle school kids especially, they want to be safe and they want to feel safe. And even though they will cry and complain and throw a fit when parents start to monitor things or set limits on tech, I think parents need to remember their goal is to keep their kids safe, happy, healthy. Well, safe and healthy at the very least. and so it is okay for the kids to have limitations on how much absolute privacy they're allowed to have, as well as how much access to this stuff they're allowed to have. Remember, it's not a right, it's a privilege. Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, look, here's something I did. People think I'm nuts, including my son. But I said that when you decide you want Snapchat or Instagram or WhatsApp, and you feel you're ready, that's great. I will allow you to be on it. My caveat is this. If you are old enough to be on it, you are old enough to read the privacy policy, learn how to use the privacy and security settings, and show me. Now, I don't know any other parents who have done that. My son is furious. I just said, tough, right? Take an hour or 2 out of your life, go through the privacy settings. When you show me that you know how to make a post public or not, when you know what delete means, when you understand the controls, then you're ready. And so...
And has he done it yet?
Nope.
Nope, and he doesn't have those apps.
And what is the perfect case scenario for parents who are trying to find this right balance between embracing technology and also giving kids a healthy perspective on when to use and when not to?
It's Hopefully, you have a kid who is engaged in multiple activities and understands that their body has to be healthy, and so they're outside. And it doesn't have to be that they're on a team, but do something healthy, have multiple interests, and then learn that this new computer in your hand, it is not a toy. You are not entitled to it. It doesn't come with your 12th birthday. And when you are irresponsible, it goes away. It is not a right, it's a privilege. And then to teach them the different tools that are available or features over time. And so my thought process would be, I'm a pretty strict parent on this, but I still think that, and you can see the approach in our home, is to give them access to devices, try and encourage them to do things, and then have consequences and penalties when they go off the rails.
So I always end with this. If you could go back and give yourselves one piece of advice about parenting, what would that be?
Chill out. Which is like, it's for me to say that is ridiculous because I'm the most type A person you will ever meet. But I think that we put tons and tons of pressure on ourselves as parents, whether it's competing with others or just trying to do everything right. And the notion that anyone really knows what we're doing is wrong. We're all doing the best we can. This is not about perfection. This is about trying to teach our kids what's right and wrong. And then ultimately they'll make mistakes. What I'm hoping is that the mistakes that my son will make will be reasonable mistakes that won't be permanent and public and
life-changing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you guys are beyond awesome, and we really, really appreciate your time and all your expertise and everything you guys are doing to help children and families out there. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
Before we get to our Off the Record segment, I wanted to let you know that the Parent Pep Talk is brought to you by Safe Kids Worldwide, which is an awesome nonprofit that's all about protecting kids from preventable injuries. Let me give you an example. Did you know that teenagers are getting hit by cars even more than very young kids? And given the topic of today's episode, it's not hard to guess why. So our Safe Kids tip of the week might be simple, but it's also important. If we can encourage our kids to put their cell phones, headphones, and all devices away just when they're crossing the street, it can really prevent injuries and save lives. It's all part of the Safe Kids Moment of Silence campaign, which is dedicated to a 15-year-old girl named Christina who was killed when crossing the street on her way to school. This is just one of the many tips from Safe Kids, so check them out at safekids.org, sign up for their Top Tips newsletter or product recalls, or join them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram for more tips, videos, and all kinds of things to keep your kids healthy, active, and safe. Okay, so our next segment is called Off the Record, and here's how it works. We have a panel of kids who are going to answer your questions to try to give you a little insights into what your kids might be thinking. This week's question is from Charlie.
Hi, my name is Charlie, and I have a question for the kids panel. My kids are addicted to their phones. I'm looking for any advice on how to keep my kids off their phones. And if it doesn't include nagging, threatening, or yelling, that would be a bonus.
So we have Owen, Emma, McCarley, and Noah. So you heard the question, so what do you think?
I know when I'm bored, usually I do tend to use my phone a lot, but usually when I'm hanging out with my friends or I'm staying after school, like for theater stuff, I usually tend to diminish like the amount of hours I'm using my phone because I'm around my friends and people I like. So try and gently nudge them towards doing something that they like.
Yeah, I really agree with that because a lot of the time kids don't really find they're too lazy to go out and like try and like go sign up for the soccer team. But if their parents know they like it and the parents nudge them towards doing it and sign them up for the, it could be something they could make new friends and have more time to be not on their phone. But don't make it seem like you're trying to like run their life.
So for me, I've never really been, I mean, that's not true. I have been addicted to my phone. But when I first got my phone, my parents set up these kind of like rules. I had to keep up good grades. My phone had to be charged downstairs. I couldn't have it in my room, which I was fine with because at least I still had it.
And how old were you when this was going on?
7th grade, halfway through 7th grade.
Now, when your parents did this, were you like, that's not fair, my friends are all have their phones all the time, and this is, you're treating me unfairly, and I don't like you anymore?
I mean, a little bit.
And what did they say when you kept complaining?
Sometimes they just ignored me. Other times they're like, you need to stop asking. Or if you ask one more time, you're not going to get it.
And do you guys as kids, when you're complaining and saying, this isn't fair, do you really know down deep inside it is fair, but you're just complaining about it anyways?
100%.
Yeah. Totally, yeah.
So is the advice then for parents to not worry about it when your kids are doing that, to just let them do that because that's what kids do, but you know you're doing the right thing, so stay strong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. And so let me ask you guys this question. I've talked to a lot of parents who say they want kids to be able to monitor themselves on their cell phones and their social media and their technology. Is there a way to get kids to understand that you need balance with technology and to monitor it themselves? Or are you just living in a dream world and you need to set parameters, and then when they get older, hopefully they'll understand and have some perspective?
No, because our brains aren't fully developed till we're 25. So
Yeah, it's like, especially, I feel like, or at least when I got my phone, I was in 7th grade. It's just hard for like a kid to realize that.
So I have one more piece of advice. Parents, you stop using your phones because children learn from role models. So adults, if you're on your phones, then your kids are going to be on your phones too. If you're reading, then your kids are going to be more persuaded to reading because they see that positive adult role model in their lives is reading.
That's a great point. So do you guys see, as kids, a lot of adults on their phone?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's like, it's not only like my parents. I see like when I'm walking, you know, if I'm at the mall with some of my friends or I'm just walking through somewhere with whoever, I see like a lot of adults on their phones with all have like earbuds in, and it's like, it makes these phones seem like, oh, adults use them, they must be so cool. And
so from a kid's perspective, when a parent is telling you get off your phone, it's not that important, to go outside and play, but they don't do it, how much of a difference does that make?
A big difference. I feel like it's not fair because when I'm on my phone and they tell me to get off, and then I see them on their phone, I say, why are you on your phone? It's like, because I'm older and I'm more responsible. I'm like, really?
And how old are you?
8.
8? So even at 8 years old, you notice when parents are saying one thing and doing something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much whenever a kid sees a parent doing something, they'll want to do it. So the reason that they don't really want to go outside as much is because they see their parents not going outside as much. So kids think, oh, I can do my own thing because my parents are doing their own thing.
So maybe one way to get your kid off their phone is to say, instead of getting off your phone, offering to do something with them, play a game, play cards, go outside and play. That would make a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, that is great advice. Thank you guys so much for your perspective and for your honesty. We really appreciate it, and I know it's going to help a lot of parents, so thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
And now it's time for our Taking One for the Team segment. I kind of think of parenting as a team sport. Well, this is when one generous parent takes one for the team by sharing a personal story that might not paint their kid or their parenting in the best light, but it hopefully helps the rest of us realize that there are no perfect kids, there are no perfect parents, and that we're all doing our best. This week's story comes from Joe.
Hey, my name is Joe, and I've got a story for the parents out there. Hopefully make you feel better about your own situation, or you can relate. Both my sons are pretty addicted to their phones and to technology in general, but one of them in particular took some liberties recently that we were not comfortable with. They are 16 and 14. And the 14-year-old's still not allowed to have social media accounts. No Facebook, no Insta, no Finsta, the fake Instagram, and no Snapchat. So at one point, a few months ago, I took my sons out to dinner, and we were at dinner, and it was strange. My younger son was a little antsy, and he was like, okay, are you done? Are you done eating? Are we ready to go?
That's
Should we go?
not normal for him.
No, he's usually chill and talking, and he's the more talkative of the two. The older teenager is the brooding teenager who doesn't want to give me any information about anything. And I was like, what is wrong with him tonight? And he didn't have his phone, and that's what I chalked it up to. But it turned out his mother came home while we were at dinner, and she heard Snapchat noises going constantly. And so she's like, where's that? She checked her phone because I guess she has Snapchat. I have no social media. I am addicted to my phone too, so I'm not a very good example for them, to be fair. But I don't have any social media, and so neither did they. But apparently he had Snapchat that we didn't know about, and it started dinging while we were at dinner.
Okay, so what happened?
So when he got home, she asked him, is there anything he needs to tell her about his phone? And he said, no, I don't think so. And she said, because I heard a lot of messages coming from your phone, and I saw them, and it was Snapchat. So it turns out he had been concealing this from us. I'm not sure how. I would lean towards uninstalling the app because his mother does run fairly frequent checks on his phone.
Yeah, so this was a pretty high quality operation.
Yeah,
right?
it was not.
Okay.
It was not. It was well thought out.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So she took his phone away, and we also took away his Xbox. because that was a strong addiction for him as well. And we thought this would, really hit home. And the way he was to get the Xbox back was simply to come up with and execute a plan for 2 instances of community service. Show his own interest, do his own research, and figure them out. Not big things, not like, spend every weekend for a month or anything. 2 hours visiting a senior center, picking up trash at your school, whatever. But something he came up with himself.
That's a good creative punishment.
I thought so too. It was his mom's idea, and I thought it was a great punishment.
Yeah,
and I was excited for it. I thought it was good.
Right.
And he just hasn't done it. Hasn't done it at all. Like, hasn't taken any interest. Like, hasn't researched anything.
And how long has this been?
Like 4 months.
And on a good side, though, at least maybe he's not as addicted to Fortnite as you once thought he was.
Well, he's clearly not as addicted to Fortnite
that's a
as
good thing.
I guess so, and I hope so. But now he's filling in that addiction with others. He now watches an awful lot of YouTube. Whatever he is allowed to do with technology, he'll jump right on it. I mean, he just go outside.
Right. Now, you said that you are also addicted to your phone, so can you put yourself in that position just for a little perspective?
I can, and that's
so
fair.
How do you
That's fair. I have now made sure that when we're spending time together, our phones are on the shelf.
Okay, good.
So I used to. Well, I've always had a double screen rule for them, like they can't watch TV and have their phones at the same time, or be on the computer and do their phones, or be on Xbox and do their phones. No 2 screens. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. but we're clearing it.
Right.
And I was not clearing it myself. So I would always sit there. We would find shows that we'd like to watch together, and I would not follow that. But I've really, really stepped up my adherence to the rules and tried to make sure that phones in the other room, doing meals together, baseball games and things like that. So we try, and I'm trying to keep.
And how's it going?
It's going well. I mean, they're basically good kids.
Right. It's just this issue of the technology.
Yeah, the addiction to the technology we're all slaves to it.
Well, you are beyond awesome for sharing this. You're an amazing dad, and we really, really appreciate you taking one for the team and sharing this information with all the parents out there. I'm sure it's going to do a lot of good.
My pleasure.
And now here's a preview from our next episode on giving back and how to raise kids who care.
The way to raise a kid who is compassionate and empathetic and grateful for what they have is to expose them to opportunities to give back to others.
And that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for tuning into the Parent Pep Talk. If you liked our podcast, please subscribe for free on iTunes or your podcast app, and also leave us a rating. If you didn't like it, I promise I'll try to do better the next time. I'd also love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments for me or our kids panel, or stories you'd like to share that would make other parents feel better, or ideas for episodes like the one we did today, please don't hesitate to email me at parentpeptalk@safekids.org or contact me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Gary Carton. Have a great week, everyone. Remember, you're doing great even if it doesn't always feel like it, and we'll see you next time on the Parent Pep Talk.